I am Enoch, the seventh from Adam. My eyes were opened not by the hands of men, but by the Creator himself. I was pulled from the dust of the earth to witness what no mortal mind was ever meant to endure. I saw the Great One descend from the heavens. I watched the highest mountains melt like wax before a blazing fire. And I heard the rebellious watchers shake with absolute terror. I saw 200 immortal beings falling from the stars, leaving behind a trail of human blood, corrupted flesh, and monstrous giants that devoured the world. In the days when the children of men had multiplied upon the earth, daughters were born to them who were beautiful and fair to look upon. The angels, the sons of heaven, saw these women and desired them. They spoke among themselves, agreeing to leave their high estate to choose wives from among the human race and beget children for themselves. It was not an accident. It was a deliberate breaking of the sacred boundary established by the Creator. They knew the holy laws of the firmament, yet they willingly turned their eyes towards the dust of the ground, consumed by a hunger that did not belong to spiritual beings. Semyaza, their appointed leader, knew the absolute gravity of this transgression. He stood before the host of heaven and spoke with a firm, heavy voice. "I fear you will not truly agree to do this deed," he warned them, looking upon the faces of his brothers. "I fear you will back down when the time comes, and I alone will have to pay the penalty for this great sin." Semyaza understood the wrath of the Most High. He refused to carry the immense weight of this cosmic rebellion on his own shoulders, demanding that every angel present share equally in the guilt and the inevitable punishment. The remaining angels answered him in unison, their voices ringing with dark resolve. They did not hesitate or turn their faces back to the light. "Let us all swear a solemn oath," they declared. "Let us bind ourselves by a mutual curse, so that none of us will turn back until we have completed this plan and achieved our goal." They consciously chose to abandon their holy station, trading the eternal spiritual heights for the corruptible flesh of the mortal realm. The pact was formed not in ignorance, but in full awareness of the divine laws they were about to shatter. They swore the oath together, binding their immortal souls under that terrible, irreversible curse. There were 200 of them in total, an entire legion of celestial watchers leaving their posts. They descended during the days of Jared, falling from the sky and landing upon the snowy summit of Mount Hermon. That massive peak was forever named Hermon, precisely because it was the physical place where they swore their oath and bound themselves to their ultimate doom. The earth received them, heavy with the presence of beings that were never meant to walk among the trees and rivers. These are the names of their chiefs, the ones who led the rebellion against the throne. Semyaza was their supreme leader. Under him were Urakiba, Ramil, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Ramuel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakiel, Asael, Armaros, Batarel, Ananel, Zachiel, Samsapil, Zatarel, Turel, Jomjael, and Sariel. These were the commanders of tens, the principal figures guiding the 200 rebellious watchers down into the primitive world of men. Each name recorded in the ancient text represents a pillar of the heavens that fell, a guardian of light that chose to extinguish its own holy purpose. All the others, together with their leaders, took wives from among the humans. Each of the 200 chose a woman for himself, and they began to go into them without restraint. They cohabited with the daughters of men. It was a choice. They traded their celestial purity for the dust of the earth. A fatal mistake. But the angels did not merely take wives to satisfy their unnatural desires. They brought the hidden, forbidden secrets of the heavenly realms down to the dirt, corrupting the natural order of human existence. They began to teach the women the forbidden knowledge of the unseen world. They revealed the ancient secrets of charms, the casting of dark enchantments, and the intricate cutting of roots. They taught them the hidden properties of plants, unlocking mysteries that the human mind was never meant to possess. The women learned these arts. They embraced the teachings of the fallen, and soon they conceived. But the seed of the Watchers did not create ordinary life. What grew inside their wombs would soon tear its way out and unleash absolute terror upon the earth. Azazel was one of the primary leaders among the fallen, and his specific teachings changed the face of the earth forever. He did not merely take a human wife, he brought the destructive and hidden secrets of heaven directly to the minds of men. Azazel taught mankind to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates. He made known to them the metals of the earth and the exact art of working them into heavy weapons. Before this, mankind knew nothing of war, nothing of iron. Azazel changed that forever. He placed the instruments of death directly into their hands, a terrifying gift, one that ensured the ground would soon be completely soaked. But the brutal weapons of war were not his only gift to the vulnerable human race. Azazel also taught them the making of bracelets and ornaments, the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids. He revealed all kinds of precious stones and all coloring tinctures to the women of the earth. He taught them how to alter their natural appearance to provoke forbidden desires and unholy attractions. Because of this specific knowledge, the world was quickly filled with unchecked lust, and the people committed fornication, completely turning their backs on the pure ways of the Creator. The impact of these celestial teachings was immediate and devastating to the natural order. Great wickedness arose among the children of men, and they sinned without any restraint or fear of divine retribution. They were led astray in all their actions, and they became completely corrupt in all their ways. The knowledge of the angels was far too heavy for the mortal mind to bear, twisting their daily lives into a constant, endless pursuit of vanity and violence. The earth, which was originally meant to be a place of quiet obedience, became a chaotic domain ruled entirely by human pride. Azazel was not the only watcher to break the celestial silence and share the forbidden mysteries of the spiritual realm. The other commanders of the fallen angels also began to whisper their own dark secrets into the ears of their human wives. Semyaza, the supreme chief of the 200, taught the humans enchantments and the intricate severing of roots. Almaros taught them how to resolve and break those very same enchantments. They replaced the simple faith of mankind with the dark and complex rituals of sorcery, making mortal men believe they could control the unseen forces of the world. The holy heavens above were also stripped of their sacred mystery and handed down as mere tools for earthly divination. Barachiel taught the signs of the lightning and the reading of the stars to those who sought forbidden power. Kokabiel revealed the secret knowledge of the constellations and their movements. Ezekiel taught the reading of the clouds, leading men to seek omens in the sky rather than listening to the voice of God. The firmament was no longer viewed as the glorious canopy of the Most High, but as a grid of signs to be studied and manipulated. The unlawful teachings continued until every natural element was corrupted by dark and unauthorized interpretation. Arachiel taught the signs of the earth, instructing the people in the practices of geomancy. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun, and Sariel taught the hidden course of the moon. All these secrets were strictly forbidden for mortals to know, yet the Watchers poured them freely into the minds of humanity. By giving away the deepest mysteries of creation, the fallen angels ensured that mankind would entirely lose its spiritual innocence. As this forbidden knowledge spread from village to village, the violence and corruption multiplied without end. Men began to slaughter each other with the iron swords of Azazel, and the weak fell beneath the new strength of the proud. As the people perished under this sudden reign of terror, their voices rose from the dust of the ruined earth. The dying cried out, and their agonizing plea went up to the very gates of heaven. The earth was now soaked in blood, preparing the way for the arrival of the giants, whose unnatural hunger would bring the world to the absolute edge of destruction. The unholy union between the spiritual Watchers and the mortal daughters of men could not remain hidden. The women who had been taken as wives by the fallen angels soon conceived, carrying a seed that completely defied the established laws of the natural world. This was not the conception of ordinary human life, but a terrifying breach of the boundaries set by the Most High. The physical bodies of the mothers were pushed beyond mortal limits, bearing the heavy, unnatural burden of celestial offspring. It was the direct result of the oath sworn on Mount Hermon, a transgression that was about to take a devastating physical form. When the time of their birth arrived, the creatures that emerged from the wombs of these women were the Nephilim. They were not men, but towering giants whose sheer scale shattered the natural order of the earth. The ancient texts record that their height reached 300 cubits, making them colossal abominations that overshadowed the trees and the hills. They walked upon the ground with a heavy, terrifying presence, possessing a physical strength that no human could ever hope to match. These giants were the bastard children of heaven and earth, an unauthorized creation built entirely on rebellion. As these massive beings grew, their hunger expanded into a relentless, bottomless void. They required vast amounts of food to sustain their colossal frames, demanding the continuous labor of the human race. The giants devoured all the acquisitions of men, taking the harvests, the crops, and the cattle without a single trace of restraint. Mankind toiled endlessly in the fields, working the soil to the point of absolute exhaustion just to feed their monstrous overlords. But no matter how much the humans produced, it was never enough to satisfy the unnatural appetite of the Nephilim. The fragile system of human survival eventually collapsed under the crushing weight of the giants' demands. When the humans could no longer sustain them, the Nephilim did not leave. They did not show mercy. Instead, they turned their terrifying gaze directly upon the children of men. The earth changed. The ones who had once served the giants were now trapped in a wasteland of pure despair. There was nowhere to hide. The giants ruled through absolute fear, bringing a suffocating darkness that swept through the human settlements. The once beautiful creation was completely broken, transformed into a domain of inescapable sorrow. Their destructive hunger did not stop with the human race. Driven by an insatiable and lawless fury, the giants began to sin against the very fabric of nature itself. They hunted the birds of the air, ripping them from the sky, and they slaughtered the beasts that roamed the fields. They turned against the reptiles crawling upon the ground and consumed the fish dwelling in the depths of the sea. Absolutely no living creature was safe from their reach. The natural harmony of the world was completely destroyed, replaced by the relentless violence of the fallen. The corruption deepened as the giants, finding no more flesh to satisfy their roaring hunger, turned violently upon each other. Madness took hold of them. The giants turned against their own kind. The earth groaned under the weight of their relentless violence, as the most sacred laws of creation were shattered. Blood, which was declared sacred by the Creator, was spilled and consumed as common water. The Nephilim proved that they were not merely destructive beasts. They were the physical embodiment of pure iniquity. Beneath the crushing footsteps of the giants, the earth itself was entirely ruined. The soil, once pure and life-giving, was now heavily soaked in the blood of men, of beasts, and of the Nephilim themselves. The ground could no longer bear the immense weight of the crimes being committed upon its surface. The devastated earth laid formal accusation against the lawless ones, raising a silent but undeniable witness to the heavens. The physical world was crying out in profound agony, and that desperate plea was about to reach the ears of the holy archangels. The surface of the earth was completely stripped of its natural peace, transformed into a barren wasteland of bones and dried blood. As the Nephilim continued their relentless slaughter, the few remaining children of men had nowhere left to hide. They were hunted in the valleys and dragged from the caves, their physical bodies broken by the unnatural strength of the giants. As humanity perished under this crushing weight, a profound and desperate sound began to rise from the dust. The dying men cried out, and their final agonizing plea did not simply vanish into the wind. It ascended directly to the gates of heaven, carrying the heavy burden of absolute despair. High above the firmament, far removed from the stench of death, the holy archangels stood in their celestial stations. Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from the pristine heights of heaven, and what they saw fractured the eternal silence of the divine court. They beheld the immense volume of blood being poured out upon the earth, pooling in the valleys and staining the ancient rivers red. They saw the lawlessness and the brutal oppression that the fallen watchers and their monstrous offspring had inflicted upon the fragile human race. The world below was no longer a sanctuary of creation. It was a theater of pure carnage. The four archangels spoke among themselves, their voices vibrating with a solemn, heavy grief. They said, "The earth, entirely devoid of hope, is crying aloud with the voice of those who have been destroyed. The plea of the dead has reached the very thresholds of the celestial gates." They could not simply turn their eyes away from the suffering, for the souls of men were actively fleeing the physical realm, rushing upward to the heavenly sanctuary. The murdered humanity laid their case before the holy ones, begging the archangels to bring their desperate petition directly before the throne of the Almighty. With the agonizing cry of the earth ringing in their ears, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel approached the throne of the Most High. They bowed before the Eternal King and spoke with unwavering clarity. "You are the Lord of Lords, the God of Gods, the King of Kings," they declared, acknowledging his supreme authority over every living thing. "The throne of your glory endures throughout all the generations of the world. You have made all things, and you possess absolute power over everything that exists. Nothing is hidden from your sight. You see exactly what has been done in the shadows of the corrupted earth." They presented the evidence of the rebellion, naming the principal architects of the destruction. "You have seen what Azazel has done," they testified, "how he has taught every form of injustice upon the earth. he has revealed the eternal hidden secrets of the heavens, handing over the brutal instruments of war and the dark arts to the hands of mortal men. Azazel was singled out for his deliberate poisoning of the human mind, introducing weapons and vanity that fractured the peaceful order. By his specific actions, the humans were given the tools to orchestrate their own slaughter. The Archangels then turned their accusation toward the supreme leader of the fallen. And you have seen Semyaza, the one to whom you gave the authority to rule over his associates. They recounted how Semyaza and his followers went down to the daughters of men, slept with them, and defiled their spiritual purity with mortal flesh. They exposed how the Watchers taught the women forbidden enchantments, leading directly to the birth of the massive devouring giants. Because of Semyaza's oath on Mount Hermon, the natural world was completely overrun by monsters, and the earth was flooded with irreversible wickedness. The four holy generals concluded their petition with a profound and urgent plea for divine intervention. Now the souls of those who have died are crying out, groaning and lamenting all the way to the gates of heaven. Their restless spirits cannot find peace because of the lawlessness that covers the earth. They looked upon the Great One, awaiting his ultimate decree. You know all these things before they even come to pass. You see the devastation. You know the suffering of the innocent, yet you have not told us what we must do to them. The heavens fell completely silent, waiting for the Creator to unleash his judgment. The absolute silence of the heavenly court was finally broken. It was not shattered by sudden thunder, but by a voice that resonated through the very foundations of the universe. The Most High, the Great and Holy One, spoke from the center of the unapproachable light. He did not ask for further evidence, nor did he deliberate with the hosts of heaven. His decrees were already set before the foundations of the earth were laid. The Creator looked upon the four waiting archangels and issued the absolute commands that would systematically dismantle the rebellion of the fallen. The first command was given to Uriel, the watcher of the celestial luminaries. The Most High ordered him to descend immediately to the son of Lamech, the righteous man named Noah. Go to him and tell him in my name to hide himself, the voice commanded, vibrating with terrifying divine authority. Reveal to him that the end is rapidly approaching, that a massive flood will soon come upon the whole earth to destroy everything that breathes. Uriel was tasked with the survival of humanity, instructed to teach Noah exactly how to preserve his seed for the generations that would follow the great destruction. The second decree was directed at Raphael, the angel of healing, but his mission was one of brutal imprisonment. Bind Azazel hand and foot, the Lord commanded, singling out the Watcher who had taught mortal men the violent art of the sword. Open a deep fissure in the barren desert of Dudael, and cast him violently into the abyss. Raphael was instructed to place rough, jagged rocks over the fallen commander, burying him alive beneath the crushing weight of the earth. Azazel was to be completely covered in absolute darkness, forever denied the light of the sun for his role in plunging mankind into the shadows. The sentence pronounced upon Azazel was eternal and uncompromising. Let him remain there forever, the Great One declared, sealing his physical and spiritual doom without a single trace of mercy. And on the great day of final judgment, he shall be hurled directly into the eternal fire. But Raphael's command did not end with the physical burial of the rebel. He was also strictly ordered to heal the earth that the angels had systematically corrupted. The Most High decreed that all the devastating sins of the world should be ascribed directly to Azazel, making him the ultimate scapegoat for the loss of human innocence. The third command fell upon Gabriel, the mighty messenger of divine strength. His order was a decree of absolute annihilation, directed at the monstrous offspring of the Watchers. Proceed against the bastards, against the children of fornication. The Lord instructed with unwavering severity. Gabriel was not told to strike them down with his own heavenly sword. Instead, he was ordered to turn the towering giants against one another, send them into battle so they may completely destroy each other by their own hands. The Nephilim were denied any length of days, and no plea from their immortal fathers would save them from the mutual slaughter. The confinement of Semyaza and his corrupted legion was not a temporary punishment. Bind them fast for 70 generations, the Creator decreed, establishing an inescapable prison of time and stone beneath the surface of the world. They would remain trapped in total suffocating darkness until the day of their final judgment and consummation. When that terrifying day finally arrived, they would be led into the eternal abyss of fire, confined in burning torment forever. With these 4 unyielding commands, the physical cleansing of the earth officially began, preparing the world for the great and terrible flood. The 4 archangels had received their absolute orders, but the Most High had one final command that was not directed at the heavenly host. The Creator called upon a mortal man, a human being made of dust and breath, to deliver the crushing verdict to the immortals. Enoch, the scribe of righteousness, was commanded to leave his earthly dwelling and physically face the fallen. The Lord spoke directly to him, telling him to go to the Watchers of heaven who had abandoned the high, holy, and eternal place to defile themselves with women. Enoch was tasked with delivering a message of absolute doom. Enoch obeyed the divine command without hesitation, traversing the earth until he found the remnants of the once glorious celestial legion. He located the fallen Watchers gathered together in a desolate place called Abel's Jail, situated deep between the ancient regions of Lebanon and Senir. They were no longer the radiant, powerful beings that had descended upon Mount Hermon in a blaze of heavenly light. They were broken, sitting together in profound weeping and mourning, with their faces completely covered in shadow. They knew the devastating physical and spiritual consequences of their unforgivable treason. Standing alone before 200 corrupted angels, the mortal scribe did not soften the terrifying words of the Most High. Enoch spoke with unwavering clarity, declaring that there would be absolutely no peace or forgiveness granted to them. He recounted their specific crimes, how they had taught humanity the tools of oppression, how they had fathered the monstrous Nephilim, and how they had irreparably ruined the earth. He told them that they would be forced to watch the brutal slaughter of their own giant children. Their eternal inheritance was completely destroyed. Enoch then turned his focus to the primary architect of the world's violence, delivering a specific and localized judgment directly to Azazel. He looked at the fallen commander and stated that a severe and unyielding sentence had gone forth against him. Azazel was told that he would be permanently bound in darkness, with no relief, no mercy, and no possibility of heavenly intercession. The decree was final because of the weapons of war he had forged and the unrighteousness he had deliberately taught to the children of men. Azazel was condemned to absolute isolation. When the fallen Watchers heard the full extent of the divine judgment, a profound and paralyzing terror seized every single one of them. The ancient texts record that fear and trembling violently shook their immortal frames as the reality of their eternal punishment set in. They, who had once stood boldly before the throne of God, were now entirely stripped of their courage and their celestial authority. The immense guilt of their rebellion crushed them so deeply that they did not even dare to lift their eyes toward heaven. They were paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of divine wrath. In their absolute desperation, the fallen angels reduced themselves to begging a mere mortal for salvation. They gathered around Enoch and pleaded with him to draw up a written petition on their behalf, desperately hoping that the Most High might still grant them a fraction of mercy. Because of the magnitude of their sins, they were permanently blocked from speaking to God themselves, and their own prayers could no longer pierce the firmament. They begged the human scribe to carry their written request for forgiveness to the throne, hoping to escape the eternal fire. Enoch agreed to record the desperate pleas of the fallen, taking up his role as the sole mediator between the corrupted watchers and the Creator. He meticulously wrote out their petition, detailing their requests for forgiveness, for the lengthening of their days, and for the sparing of their monstrous children. With the heavy scroll of their confessions in his hands, Enoch departed from the weeping angels of Abel's Yale. He traveled to the waters of Dan, to the south and west of Mount Hermon, where he prepared to read the petition and await the final, unalterable response. Enoch sat alone by the waters of Dan, holding the heavy scroll containing the desperate prayers of the fallen watchers. As he read their petition aloud in the quiet isolation of the earth, a profound exhaustion overcame his mortal body. He lay down by the edge of the water and fell into a deep, supernatural sleep. But his mind was not permitted to rest in the shadows. A terrifying vision descended upon him, a vivid dream of divine judgment that forcefully pulled his spirit upward, lifting him far above the physical boundaries of the ruined world. The winds of the firmament caught him, elevating him through the unseen layers of the heavens until he stood before a towering wall constructed entirely of crystal. Tongues of living fire surrounded the structure, vibrating with an immense, unapproachable heat. Enoch stepped through the flames without being consumed, entering a vast celestial house where the floor itself was made of glass and the ceiling mirrored the path of the stars. But this was merely the outer court of the divine sanctuary. Ahead of him stood a second house, far greater and more terrifying than the first, with portals of blazing fire standing wide open. Enoch fell upon his face, unable to bear the overwhelming weight of the divine presence radiating from within the second house. From the ground, he saw a throne built of pure ice and blazing fire, and from beneath it flowed rivers of unquenchable flame. Upon the throne sat the Great Glory, whose garments shone brighter than the sun and whiter than any earthly snow. The majesty of the Most High was so absolute that not even the highest angels could approach or look directly upon his face. It was the epicenter of creation, the absolute pinnacle of cosmic authority. The Lord of Spirits spoke directly to the trembling scribe, commanding him to stand and hear the final, unalterable verdict. The voice from the throne was completely devoid of mercy for the fallen. "Go and say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent you to intercede for them," the Creator commanded. "You should intercede for men, and not men for you." The Most High explicitly condemned their unnatural descent, declaring that they were created as holy, spiritual beings meant to live an eternal life. Yet they had willingly defiled themselves with the mortal blood of women. The petition was completely and eternally denied. The Creator decreed that the fallen angels would never again ascend to the heavens, nor would they find any peace upon the earth. They had abandoned the high and holy place to lust after the daughters of men. taking wives, and producing children of flesh. Because of this deliberate treason, the Lord declared that they would be forced to witness the violent destruction of their own offspring. No amount of weeping or petitioning would change the decree. Their eternal inheritance was officially and permanently revoked. But the judgment pronounced from the throne did not end with the fallen watchers. It extended directly to the monstrous Nephilim they had created. The Lord revealed the dark and terrifying fate that awaited the giants after their physical bodies were destroyed in the coming slaughter, because the Nephilim were born from a forbidden mixture of Holy Spirit and mortal flesh. Their souls would not be permitted to ascend to heaven, nor would they be allowed to rest in the quiet depths of the earth. They were unauthorized abominations, entirely rejected by both realms of existence. When the giants fell in battle, their immortal spirits would leave their massive corpses and remain trapped upon the surface of the world. The Most High decreed that these disembodied entities would become the evil spirits of the earth. They would roam unseen among humanity, causing corruption, affliction, and relentless sorrow. They would not eat, they would not thirst, but they would endlessly torment the children of men until the great day of final consummation. The giants would physically die, but their dark, predatory presence would haunt the human race for generations. Following the terrifying denial of the Watcher's petition, Enoch was not immediately returned to the mortal realm. The holy angels took him by the hand and led him away from the throne, carrying him to the very edges of existence. They showed him the hidden foundations of creation, the secret storehouses of the winds, the cornerstones of the earth, and the boundaries of the firmament. He witnessed the deep pathways of the lightning and the thunder, seeing how the physical world was perfectly ordered by the Creator. But beyond the organized structure of nature, Enoch was brought to a place of absolute chaos. He stood before a terrifying void where there was neither firmament above nor solid earth below. It was a barren, awful wasteland, and there he saw 7 stars of heaven bound together, burning violently like massive mountains of fire. The guiding angel, Uriel, explained that this was the eternal prison for the stars and the hosts of heaven. They had deliberately transgressed the commandment of the Lord before their time had arrived, abandoning their assigned posts in the sky. For their cosmic disobedience, they were bound in this desolate abyss for 10,000 years. Just beyond the prison of the stars, the angels showed Enoch an even more dreadful abyss. It was a massive cleft extending deep into the cosmos, filled with descending columns of unquenchable fire. Uriel looked upon the terrified scribe and declared that this was the ultimate prison of the fallen angels. This was the exact location where the Watchers who had defiled themselves with mortal women would be permanently locked away. They would be violently cast into this burning chasm, enduring complete isolation and torment until the great day of their final judgment. From the fiery abyss, the angels transported Enoch far to the west, bringing him before a great and high mountain made of hard, impenetrable rock. Inside this massive structure were 4 deep, hollow places, incredibly smooth and suffocatingly dark. Raphael, the angel of healing, explained that these hollow chambers were created specifically to gather the souls of the dead. Every human spirit that departs from the physical body is brought to this exact mountain, waiting in the absolute silence of the underworld. They are kept securely within these dark divisions until the day of the Great Tribulation. As Enoch looked into the darkness, he heard the voices of the dead crying out. One particular spirit was making a relentless, agonizing suit that echoed all the way to the gates of heaven. Raphael revealed that this was the spirit of Abel, crying out for vengeance against his brother Cain, demanding that Cain's seed be completely destroyed from the face of the earth. The 4 chambers strictly separated the souls of the dead, the righteous near a bright spring of water, the sinners who escaped justice in life, the sinners already punished, and the murdered. The celestial tour continued as Enoch was brought to a magnificent mountain range, where the highest peak reached directly into the heavens like the throne of God. Surrounding this holy mountain were fragrant trees, but one tree stood out with a scent surpassing all others. Michael, the supreme commander, explained that this was the sacred tree of life. Its life-giving fruit was strictly forbidden to any mortal being. Until the great judgment is completed and the earth is renewed, only then will its fruit be officially given to the holy and righteous. After witnessing the physical prisons of the cosmos, Enoch was granted a new and profound vision, the beginning of the 3 great parables. The first parable revealed the absolute, unalterable destiny of the righteous and the sinners, showing exactly what happens when the final judgment finally falls upon the corrupted earth. In that terrifying day, the congregation of the holy ones will finally appear, and the wicked will be forcefully driven from their presence. The division between light and shadow will no longer be hidden by the deceitful illusions of the mortal world. It will be a permanent and undeniable separation. The righteous and the elect will be physically and spiritually transformed, their faces shining with a brilliant, unfading light that mirrors the celestial realm. They will be granted eternal peace, and the renewed earth will be given to them as an everlasting possession. The sinners, who willingly corrupted the world and eagerly followed the dark teachings of the Watchers, will be violently expelled from the surface of the earth. They will be cast directly into the terrifying voids Enoch had previously seen, swallowed entirely and forever by the eternal darkness. Enoch then saw the massive heavenly books being opened before the Lord of Spirits. These were the absolute, infallible records of creation, detailing every single action, every hidden thought, and every drop of blood spilled upon the dirt. Nothing was forgotten, and absolutely no crime was overlooked by the vigilant eyes of the celestial court. The treacherous deeds of the fallen angels, the violent hunger of the giants, and the sins of corrupted men were meticulously documented in these ancient scrolls. When these books are read aloud, the guilt of the wicked will be undeniably recorded. Standing directly before the Lord of Spirits, Enoch observed 4 magnificent and terrifying figures, the 4 presences that constantly guard the eternal throne. He heard their ancient names and learned their specific, unwavering duties in the heavenly realm. Michael, the merciful and long-suffering commander. Raphael, who is set over all the diseases and the brutal wounds of the children of men. Gabriel, who is set over all the powers and the destruction of the Nephilim. And Phanuel, who is set over the repentance of those who inherit eternal life. Their unyielding presence guarantees the strict execution of the divine will. The parable then shifted to the tragic and stubborn nature of the human heart, revealing exactly why the earth fell so deeply into terminal corruption. Wisdom, the pure and holy essence of the Creator, came down to the physical earth to dwell among the children of men. She sought a home among the nations, offering true light and eternal understanding to a world drowning in the Watcher's lies. But the humans, completely drunk on the forbidden violent knowledge of Azazel, turned their backs on her entirely. Wisdom was completely and utterly rejected. Because she found no welcoming dwelling place among mortals, Wisdom was forced to return to her celestial origin. taking her seat forever among the holy angels in the highest heavens. But as wisdom departed from the physical world, iniquity eagerly stepped forward from her secret chambers. Iniquity did not have to search for a home. The children of men welcomed her with open arms and greedy hearts. The earth fully embraced violence, vanity, and the dark arts of the fallen, ensuring that the brutal judgment of the Most High was absolutely justified. The first parable concluded with a terrifying vision of the ultimate cosmic cleansing that awaits the end of days. The stars of heaven that had deliberately broken the divine law. The fallen watchers who had abandoned their holy stations for the flesh of women were gathered together for their final execution. Enoch saw them being hurled directly into the deep, burning abyss, alongside the wicked kings and men who had followed their destructive path. The complete annihilation of the corrupted order was not a mere possibility. It was inevitable. The second parable opened before the eyes of the scribe, revealing the ultimate authority that governs the cosmos. Enoch saw the head of days sitting upon the throne of his glory, his head white and pure like wool, and his garments shining with an indescribable light. The entire host of heaven, the 10,000 times 10,000 angels, stood before him in absolute unbroken reverence. This was the supreme court of the universe, the final destination for every soul that had ever walked upon the physical earth. The time for the Watcher's rebellion and the arrogance of mortal men was officially brought to an end. Beside the head of days stood another figure, one whose face possessed the appearance of a man, yet radiated with the fierce, burning grace of the holy angels. The guiding angel revealed to Enoch that this was the Son of Man, to whom all righteousness belongs. His name was spoken and established before the Lord of Spirits, long before the sun and the celestial signs were created. He was chosen and hidden before the foundation of the world, designed to be the ultimate judge of both the immortal and the mortal. The Son of Man was the absolute embodiment of divine justice. This Son of Man was not merely an observer of the cosmic order. He was the prophesied staff for the righteous, the firm support upon which the holy ones would lean and not fall. He was established to be the light of the Gentiles and the undeniable hope of those who are troubled in their hearts. All who dwell upon the dry ground will eventually fall down and bow before him, blessing and glorifying the Lord of Spirits. He possesses the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of understanding, and the unmatched power to reveal the hidden treasures of the darkness. As the Son of Man took his seat upon the throne of glory, the vast books of the living were opened before him. The Lord of Spirits summoned the kings, the governors, and the high officials who possessed the earth and ruled it with an iron fist. These were the men who built their massive earthly kingdoms upon the broken backs of the innocent, completely ignoring the righteous laws of the Creator. They were violently dragged from their palaces and brought before the celestial court, stripped entirely of their crowns, their gold, and their temporary power. When the mighty rulers of the earth looked upon the face of the Son of Man, a paralyzing, suffocating terror seized their souls. The pain came upon them like a woman in labor, and their faces were instantly covered in profound shame and darkness. They realized that their vast armies and their hoarded wealth were completely useless against the crushing weight of heavenly retribution. They desperately tried to hide their faces from the blinding light of the throne, but there is absolutely no shadow deep enough to conceal the wicked. In their final moments of clarity, the arrogant kings broke their silence and uttered a desperate, pathetic lamentation. "We have not believed in him," they cried out in agony, "and we have not glorified the name of the Lord of spirits." They confessed that they had placed their hope in their own fragile empires and in the fleeting glory of mortal flesh. They begged for just a single moment of respite to fall down and worship the Creator. But their plea was flatly and eternally denied. The angels of punishment immediately stepped forward, taking hold of the corrupt kings and the mighty men of the earth. The wicked were violently driven from the presence of the Son of Man, their faces covered in eternal darkness as they were dragged toward the abyss of fire. But for the righteous and the elect, the second parable offered an unbreakable promise of salvation. They would be saved in his name, rising from the earth to share in the eternal, unfading light, living forever in the holy presence of the Son of Man. The time for heavenly deliberation had passed, and the physical execution of the divine decrees finally began upon the ruined earth. Gabriel, the Archangel of strength and destruction, descended from the firmament like a falling star, landing amidst the chaotic strongholds of the Nephilim. He did not come bearing a sword of light to strike them down himself, for the Lord of Spirits had ordained a much more brutal end for the abominations. Gabriel was commanded to ignite the dormant fury within their massive chests, turning their insatiable rage inward against their own kind. The bastards of the fallen Watchers were about to become the architects of their own ruin. A sudden, blinding madness swept through their ranks. Brother turned against brother in an explosion of colossal violence. The earth trembled as they struck each other down without a single drop of mercy. It was the raw, unrestrained savagery of a broken creation actively erasing itself. While the giants ripped themselves apart in the blood-soaked plains, their immortal fathers were forced to bear witness to the slaughter. Semyaza and the corrupted Watchers stood paralyzed, unable to intervene or save the monstrous children they had so desperately petitioned the Most High to protect. They watched in absolute horror. The towering Nephilim faced the raw, crushing weight of divine justice. Their reign of terror was over, permanently, at the hands of their own kin. The divine sentence was unfolding exactly as Enoch had prophesied to them in the desolate valley of Abel Jael. Their eternal inheritance was not just revoked, it was physically butchered before their very eyes. As the final giant fell, bleeding out upon the ruined soil, the supreme commander of the heavenly host made his descent. Michael arrived with the unbreakable chains of celestial judgment, walking directly towards Semyaza and the remaining commanders of the 200. The fallen Watchers did not resist, for their spirits were completely broken by the horrific death of their beloved offspring. Michael spoke the words of the Most High, confirming that their days of freedom upon the physical earth had officially ended. They had witnessed the slaughter, and now they would be bound in the suffocating depths of the darkness. Michael bound Semyaza hand and foot, wrapping the heavy invisible chains of divine wrath around his once glorious immortal frame. The supreme Archangel then bound every single Watcher who had defiled himself with the daughters of men, securing them together in a state of absolute terror. They were dragged violently into the deep hidden valleys of the earth, far away from the light of the sun and the celestial paths they had abandoned. The Most High had explicitly commanded that they remain trapped in these subterranean prisons for exactly 70 generations. They were buried alive in the physical world they had completely corrupted. The earth closed heavily over the fallen angels, sealing them in a pitch-black tomb where they could neither move nor speak to the heavens. Michael ensured that the binding was absolute, leaving them in agonizing isolation to await the distant day of their final consummation. They knew that when the 70 generations finally expired, they would not be released into freedom, but dragged directly into the eternal abyss of fire. The rebellion that began with a proud oath on the freezing summit of Mount Hermon ended in the suffocating silence of an inescapable dungeon. With Azazel buried in the desert, the Nephilim completely eradicated, and Semyaza bound in the deep valleys, the surface of the earth grew strangely quiet. But it was not the quiet of a restored paradise. It was the heavy, ominous silence that precedes a total cosmic cleansing. The physical world was still deeply poisoned by the spilled blood and the forbidden teachings of the Watchers. A far greater purification was required to wash away the deeply rooted iniquity of the mortal race. The dark clouds began to gather heavily over the horizon, signaling the terrifying arrival of the great and cleansing flood. The surface of the earth was finally purged of the towering Nephilim, but the soil remained irreversibly infected by the sins of the Watchers. The blood of the innocent, violently mixed with the dark sorcery taught by Semyaza and the weapons forged by Azazel, had permanently stained the ancient foundations of the mortal world. The Most High looked down from the throne of glory upon the ruined creation and knew that a partial judgment was simply not enough to save humanity. The deep, agonizing corruption required a total, absolute washing of the physical realm. The skies above began to shift ominously, growing heavy with the terrifying promise of the great and cleansing flood. Before the devastating waters could be released from the hidden storehouses of heaven, the preservation of the righteous human line had to be absolutely secured. Uriel, the holy archangel of the celestial luminaries, descended silently to the son of Lamech, the righteous man known as Noah. He did not come bearing a sword of fire, but with a profound divine warning that would single-handedly determine the survival of the human race. Uriel spoke the precise words of the Creator, commanding Noah to hide himself and prepare for the imminent worldwide destruction. He revealed the exact nature of the coming judgment, warning that the entire earth would soon be completely submerged. Noah was meticulously instructed on exactly how to preserve his life, ensuring that the pure, uncorrupted seed of humanity would not be extinguished by the rising waters. He was chosen by the Lord of Spirits because he had not tainted his bloodline with the forbidden violent teachings of the fallen angels. As Noah obediently built his massive vessel of salvation, the heavens finally broke open, unleashing a torrential fury that the physical world had never seen before. The hidden fountains of the great deep burst forth violently from beneath the ground, and the immense windows of the firmament were completely shattered. The punishing floodwaters rose with an unstoppable, terrifying violence, rapidly covering the deep valleys, swallowing the high hills, and eventually burying the tallest mountains under a crushing weight of water. Every living creature that moved upon the dry land, every beast, every bird, and every corrupted man who had eagerly embraced the darkness of the Watchers, perished entirely in the cold, unforgiving depths. The earth was being baptized in an ocean of divine wrath, physically washing away the evidence of the ultimate cosmic rebellion. The Nephilim were gone, the fallen angels were chained in darkness below, and the corrupted humanity was entirely erased. But the Most High had also given Enoch a powerful prophetic vision of the world that would emerge after the devastating waters finally receded. The Lord of Spirits promised that the earth would be physically and spiritually healed, planted with the eternal seeds of righteousness, joy, and truth. The renewed soil would yield its fruit in massive abundance. The vines would overflow with wine, and the days of righteous men would be completed in absolute peace. The ultimate goal of the Creator was not the mere destruction of the physical world, but the complete restoration of his original perfect design for the children of men. Knowing the entirety of the cosmic plan, Enoch gathered his son Methuselah and his family for his final solemn earthly testament. He handed over the heavy sacred scrolls containing the visions of the heavens, the dark prisons of the angels, and the prophesied coming of the Son of Man. He urged his children to walk strictly in the paths of righteousness, warning them that the wicked would inevitably rise again in the distant future. Testing the faith of the elect, his mortal mission was officially completed, and the scribe of righteousness prepared to leave the physical world forever. Enoch was not subjected to the terrifying waters of the flood, nor did his physical body taste the bitter sting of mortal death. The holy angels descended and lifted him from the surface of the earth, carrying him upward through the firmament to the eternal realms of light. He was brought to dwell among the holy ones, taking his permanent place near the blazing throne of the great glory, where the rivers of fire flow endlessly. The forbidden story of the fallen angels was sealed in the heavenly books, waiting for the final day of judgment. But the secrets of the ancient world don't stop here. If you want to uncover what else was hidden from humanity, make sure to subscribe right now. We have more ancient mysteries to reveal.